Welcome to the 2014 AppNexus EMEA Summit. It's our second year here in London, and I couldn't be more excited to be here with you. Now let me start today with a question. How many of you think that programmatic is going to be big in your home market? Most of you. Now last year, when we were here in London for the first time, I'm not so sure that so many people would have raised their hands. This has been a year of extraordinary growth, not just globally, but right here across Europe. We've seen more growth, more innovation, and more adoption of programmatic across Europe than anywhere else in the world. And so I am so excited to be here with you today. Now, as you know, I'm a longtime believer in the capacity of programmatic to change advertising. But I'm not willing just to trust my instincts on this. I've actually done some homework this year. And I'd like to share with you the research that we've done on the growth of programmatic advertising over the next few years. Now, we've got some numbers here that we pulled from IDC. I made some of these up, but most of this you can believe in. Now these numbers here you've probably seen before. Digital advertising is a $113 billion market today, or last year, across the world. And of that, of course, a lot is search, but even more is non-search. And those numbers will grow meaningfully through 2017. So $177 billion of digital advertising. That's a 12 or 13% compound growth rate over the next 4 years. And this is growing, of course, much faster than advertising as a whole. It shouldn't surprise you that digital is the future of advertising. But if you take this a step further and you start breaking down what digital advertising is, let's take that non-search number and break out social. Now social, of course, is often a closed platform. Facebook has a huge audience and lots of data, and much like Google and search, they want to capture as much of that value for themselves as they can. And so this really is a closed platform, which leaves us with about $60 billion that are accessible to all of us through open platforms. Now, if you go down another step, of course, we still have a lot of that money which is being sold by hand, going direct, often from publisher to advertiser through media buyers. But there's still another half of this number that is indirect, that's accessible for technology, for us to actually go and enhance the value of impressions and make it more effective for marketers. Now, if we take this one step further, IDC says that last year, RTB was a $5 billion market. That's not too bad if you consider that in 2008 it was $0 billion, and that 10 years ago it didn't even exist. But if you look at these same numbers in 2017, the growth is impressive. So if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see that that non-search number goes extremely fast from 67 to 118. While search grows, search doesn't grow as fast as the rest of the market. Social doubles over the next 4 years. Good news for Facebook. But what's really crazy about this is that the rest of the internet grows just as fast. And if you break down that open platform number, that $105 billion, what you see is that direct sales, the direct sponsorships and the hand sold, isn't going to grow particularly over the next 4 years. And in fact, that's been a trend that we've seen for a number of years. In the United States, the portal market isn't growing on the direct side. It's growing on the indirect side, the technology-enabled side. You could almost look at this as the ad tech market, if you wanted to. And what really is exciting, if you're in the RTB business, like most of us are, is that $21 billion RTB number. Now, 4 times growth. And look, $21 billion is a lot of money. So I think we're all doing quite well by being in the RTB space. But something about these numbers, even though IDC says they're right, sort of sticks in my craw. I don't really think that $53 billion non-RTB number really does justice to the amount of programmatic and technology that's actually going on. But I think before we try to figure out why, we can really call 3 key insights from this chart and these numbers. So what will ad tech look like in 2017? Well, first off, anyone here doubt that it will be mobile? No hands. I think that's a given. I don't think I even have to convince you of this. We are at peak PC. People are buying PCs less and less frequently. PCs are still incredibly important for our lives, but most of the growth is coming in tablets and phones. And smartphones are taking over the world. There's entire countries where PCs are never going to have a significant foothold. And this is a huge opportunity. The second thing I can tell you about 2017 is that it's going to work. Now, I'm not saying that digital advertising doesn't work today, but I will say that there are many things about digital advertising that are confusing. If anyone's seen some of these eye charts, I think we can agree it's complicated. If I asked each of you, what does programmatic mean? How many different definitions do you think I would get? I'm going to guess between 200 and 224. All right, that's about 1 per 2 people here. And I think it's a kind of scary thing. Imagine yourself as a CMO of a big brand going, do I want to invest in programmatic? Well, which programmatic? Whose definition? Who do I call? Who do I trust? So it's going to be understandable. But more importantly, some of the front page issues that our industry has seen are going to be resolved. Fraud, at least as we know it today, will be gone. We as an industry have taken great steps over the past 24 months to address the issues of fraud. I'm not saying they're gone. What I have seen is immense progress, both at AppNexus and at other leading companies around the space. And I think it's important to note that we're going to use technology to make advertising work better. A great example, viewability, a topic near and dear to my heart, is something that will be a standard in 2017. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think this is an opportunity for us in the digital advertising space to make advertising work better. And I think a lot of the technology issues that we see, the incompatibilities, the questions about tracking and about cookies, they will be resolved in 2017. So this space will just work. And my third insight about 2017 is that programmatic will be more than just RTB. This is a bigger space than RTB. That's a protocol. And as many of you know, this is something that's bothered me for a long time. RTB is a great protocol. And certainly, holding real-time auctions is a great way for certain kinds of matching of buyers and sellers. But it's not the only way. In fact, at AppNexus, while we're a major participant in RTB, it's less than half of the volume that we transact on a programmatic basis. Last August, a number of us were sitting in a conference room in New York wondering, how can this be? How can we be here as the pioneers of RTB, but with a business that's largely not RTB? And why can't we figure out how to talk about it? And we all sat and stared at each other. And then I grabbed a whiteboard marker. You probably all know I love whiteboards. And I ran up to the whiteboard, and I scribbled this crazy diagram. And I looked over at Michael and said, what do you think? He sort of nodded his head politely and said, that's interesting. And that voice he uses when he means, I think he's crazy. But it sat on that whiteboard for a couple of days. And every day we found ourselves referring to it more and more. And it kind of looked like a hawk. It had kind of wings, And so we began calling this the hawk. And again and again in conversation we say, it's kind of like the hawk. And we realized that there was a core insight here, that really what we're talking about is a world where buyers and sellers don't just connect via RTB. They connect using different techniques. And that if we can look at those different ways of connecting, what we're really talking about is a world of multiple marketplaces. And that was the key insight, that we don't live in an RTB world. We do live in a programmatic world, and that the buyers and sellers are connecting in 4 distinct marketplaces. So what's a marketplace? Well, the traditional definition, if you look it up online, is that a marketplace is an open place, open being a keyword, where buyers and sellers convene to buy and sell goods. So what's a programmatic marketplace? Well, it's still an open place, that's a critical point, where buyers and sellers use technology to convene to buy and sell advertising. That's not a crazy definition. What does programmatic technology do? Well, programmatic technology helps buyers evaluate inventory and opportunities to market, and it helps sellers maximize their revenue in these marketplaces. These all seem pretty basic as ideas, but when you put them together, what I'm really telling you is this is ad tech. This is the definition of the world we live in. So let's walk through what this means in practice. What are these 4 marketplaces? Well, the first one is one that you're familiar with. We talked about RTB. Well, RTB really is a marketplace where the seller auctions ads to the buyer in real time. So the protocol is RTB, or real-time bidding. And the buyer has a lot of power here. The buyer gets to use audience data and technology to decide whether or not to buy an ad, and more importantly, how much they want to pay. They take the risk. It's their decision whether or not to bid. And the seller, of course, gets a CPM. They get a guaranteed payment as long as they agree to transact. So this is arguably a very seller-friendly market because they get paid, but in some ways, the buyer has all the control. And so this works really well in cases where the buyer can bring data and technology to bear, but it also runs the risk of undervaluing the seller. We've seen a lot of buyers just saying, I want to buy my audience wherever I find it. And at the same time, you see major publishers like the New York Times saying, programmatic advertising is killing our revenue. We have to lay people off. And that bothers me, because what's happening is they're transacting in one place that has this characteristic, which is biased towards audience, not towards context. So that's auction. Now the next marketplace is performance. Now this is something that many of you have been doing for many years. And in fact, mobile is a very performance-driven market. In the performance marketplace, the buyer says, I'll pay for performance. I'll pay for leads. I'll pay for clicks. I'll pay for conversions. I'll pay for installs. That's a performance-driven marketplace. And the seller says, OK, I'll deliver you what you want. But in return, I get all the reward. I get to, I can get a $100 CPM. I can get a $1,000 CPM. I can get a nothing CPM. I'm taking the risk, and I get all the reward. And this is obviously a marketplace where technology plays a huge part. The seller needs a technology platform that can combine all of these different performance offers from across the entire ecosystem and figure out which one to run to make the most money. This is not an RTB-enabled marketplace. This has to happen on a single platform. And it's one reason that AppNexus has the largest performance marketplace in the world. And it's a reason that over the past few months, we've completely revamped our optimization system and built a 2.0 of our performance marketplace. It's one of our unique characteristics. And it's something you miss out on if you build a bidder, because you can't bid on a performance currency. You can only bid on a CPM. And this is a really important part of the ecosystem, again, because 80% of mobile demand is from performance. And you can see this across the board. Anyone here who's clicked on an ad for Candy Crush Saga or Clash of Clans, you're participating in the performance marketplace. Now, the third marketplace I want to talk about is the guaranteed marketplace. Now, you could argue, and we have this fight internally, about whether this is really a marketplace. So when a buyer says, I'll pay you up front, or I'll commit to paying you for a reservation, for a guaranteed spot on your pages, that's the guaranteed marketplace. Today, it really isn't a marketplace because it's not open. A marketplace has to be an open place where buyers and sellers convene, and that doesn't exist today. So really, you could say this is just a guaranteed, conversation between buyer and seller. But we believe that this is going to very quickly turn into a true marketplace. And there's a number of companies out there, including AppNexus, who are building innovative technology for buyers and sellers to actually connect using technology to facilitate this process. I believe that the reservation is a critical tool for buyers and sellers. But I don't think that it will always be a handshake or a phone call or a game of golf. I think we're going to see technology intermediate this marketplace and make it more effective. But this marketplace has some challenges. Today, in this marketplace, the seller has all the control. The seller can bring data, can bring context, can use that to drive very, very high prices. But the buyer doesn't have a lot of control. Once you make that guaranteed buy, you kind of have to take all the inventory you bought. You can't really use your audience or technology to decide exactly what to buy. So none of these marketplaces really has the characteristics that I personally think a powerful programmatic future requires. We need a marketplace where the seller can use context and data, and the buyer can use technology and data to make advertising more effective. I believe that most marketers would be happy to pay twice the CPM for media that was 3 times as effective. And the only way to do that is for buyer and seller both to bring all their assets to bear. In fact, potentially to collaborate, to find the right way to mix their assets to create the best experience for the consumer, the best results for the marketer, and to pay the publisher for producing high-value content. That's the virtuous cycle that we're trying to create at AppNexus. And I believe the future of that is the deals marketplace. This marketplace is where buyers and sellers do exactly what I said. The seller creates a deal, the buyer decides which deals to buy, and they can both use all of their technology and all of their data to create an optimal outcome. We've seen cases on our platform, and we've launched our deals functionality over the past year. By the way, here in Europe, all of our beta customers were European. And what you've done is you've actually proven this point. You've shown that buyers will pay twice as much or more for media when it performs better and when it can actually leverage the data and context of the seller. So in many ways, I believe this is the future of programmatic advertising. And it doesn't have to be RTB. So we have 3 marketplaces that are not RTB driven and one that is. And so if you go back to my first slide where I talk about all the money, because at the end of the day, we all like money. If you look at this from that perspective, what you see, if you drill in that $105 billion open platform number, we still have 74 billion that's indirect and then 31 that's direct. But even that direct number begins to be programmatic. About 40% of all direct dollars in 2017 will be programmatic. And I'm not going to tell you exactly how, because I think the technologies are rapidly evolving. But I do think we can count on this, that this is going to change. And those other marketplaces will grow dramatically. Performance is a big market. And since the future is mobile, you know the future has a major performance component. And these are our internal AppNexus estimates. IDC hasn't put these out yet. We'll work with them on that. But the auction marketplace, that's still 21 billion. So that's RTB, according to the IDC. I'm calling that the auction marketplace. So still critically important. And then we have the deals marketplace, which I believe will be bigger than RTB or the auction marketplace in 2017. This is the future. This is growth. This is the opportunity that all of us have. And only $9 billion of this indirect money will be transacted in a non-programmatic way. If you add this up, this means that the programmatic market in 2017 will be $78 billion. If that doesn't put a shiver down your spine, maybe I should say it again. $78 billion. That's a lot of money. If you want to know why companies like AppNexus are investing so heavily in deals, in programmatic guaranteed, in making RTB better, it's because the only way this works is if we all work together. Those jugglers you saw earlier, tossing these big balls back and forth, that was synchronized. That was collaborative, right? They figured that out offline, right? That was not a real-time decision that they all made. You might have thought that. But what they did right there was they figured out the best way to entertain you. They had a lot of balls in the air, like we all do. And I believe that fundamentally this ecosystem is doing exactly that. We're finding ways collaboratively to make the world, to make the internet a better place. And I think that is why this is happening here in Europe. Because that is something that culturally, I think you might be better at than Americans. So given this, you may ask yourself, how do I get involved? How do I use these multiple marketplaces to make my business grow like crazy between now and 2017? I think to really answer that question, we have to go back to some marketing and media basics. So this won't come as a surprise to you, but you have to have a 3x3 matrix for this to be really effective. On the left here, what you see are the 3 basic categories of marketer goals, right, objectives. So brand awareness, brand response, and direct response. And brand response meaning when a brand cares about the quality of content, cares about hitting the right audience, but also wants to hit a performance metric. So you can think e-commerce as a great example of this, or travel. And this is really marketing 101. And across the top here, we have 3 different kinds of inventory. We have endemic premium, meaning I have content that's particularly valuable to a particular audience. So if I'm a health-oriented site, I have an endemic audience for, say, pharmaceutical brands, right? We have quality non-endemic. So there's tons of inventory out there. It's hard to fit to a particular category of buyer. And then, of course, we have the long tail and reach, which is, I'm not saying it's not quality. What I'm saying is it's harder for us to, as a brand, go say, I want to go buy that. It's just too hard to connect it to my particular audience. And if you look at this, there's a couple of obvious outcomes. So if I'm in the direct response space, and I want to go maximize my ability to find customers, the way to do that is to buy in a performance marketplace. Now, you say, well, hey, I run performance in RTB today. Why are you saying that's not going to work? I'm not saying it's not going to work. What we've seen, though, is that publishers increasingly are using yield management techniques to raise the price of inventory to a point where pure performance doesn't work as well. One reason that we've seen the performance business on the PC side decline in some ways is because we've seen such an increase in demand from brand and brand response marketers. And of course, I don't think we're going to see a lot of performance offers running on real premium endemic content. So the performance marketplace, great for direct response. If you go up to the brand response section here, it's RTB, or the auction marketplace. And the reason this is the case is because what's the one most valuable signal for brand response? Really? Come on, it's retargeting. It always works. It's audience data. It's the signal we get when we know people are interested in our products. And the best way to connect that signal to inventory is by bidding on an open auction where I can actually see every single user, every consumer, and connect to them directly. And I'm willing to pay a premium for the ability to find exactly who I want. So this is bottom of the funnel stuff, and this is why RTB has grown, and this will drive the growth of RTB over the next few years. Now you may say, well, hey Brian, why do you have RTB buying in the reach and long tail? Well, I believe this is exactly connected to the investments that we're all making in preventing fraud and doing a better job of contextualizing inventory, of connecting viewability to what we buy to help provide signals to make this inventory something that these big brand response buyers will believe in and want to spend money on. And of course, the final frontier here is brand. Now, brands will still buy premium endemic content through guarantees and upfronts. So if I'm a big publisher and I have endemic financial content or medical content or whatever, I actually will get the most money by having one of my salespeople go out and either do an upfront deal or go out and negotiate, because I have scarcity. There's very little of this content out there. And so I want to use one of these human beings, okay, to go out and talk to another human being and make a deal and figure this out. Technology may enable this process to be more efficient, but I'm not saying in any way that that's going to go away. I still think people have a huge role here. But I think that when you move off of that endemic match between buyer and seller, deals have a huge opportunity. Deals let the non-endemic sellers bring in data, whether that's contextual or behavioral, to actually merchandise their inventory to these brands. Now you might say, deals, you're saying deals are only for brand awareness. The problem with using deals for brand response is that, again, you have a pricing disconnect. If the buyer mainly cares about performance, it's actually hard to say, I want to pay a premium for your context or your audience. I've already got my own technological and audience assessment. So while we do see some deals being used this way, and certainly all of us use deals to evaluate whether or not a particular package or bundle of inventory works, I believe that the primary purpose for deals in 2017 will be to allow brands to extend their reach beyond that endemic content, and to allow the publisher community and the seller community to actually find ways to increase the value of inventory, even if it's not the first thing that comes into the media buyer's mind when they think of inventory they want to buy. And what this means is we can unlock a ton of value. Now, shameless plug, you need to find a technology platform that can transact in all four of these marketplaces. You need a business strategy. By the way, that's AppNexus. That was the shameless plug. But you need a business strategy as well that lets you and your team start to think about what the right fit is for your business. All of us have to go out and ask ourselves that question. How does a world of multiple programmatic marketplaces impact my business, my differentiation, my technology investments, and what I need to do to be successful over the next 3 years? It's a huge opportunity, and I know that we can do it together, but I think it's important right now to ask ourselves that question. Now at AppNexus, we did ask ourselves that question. And we thought to ourselves, what are we going to do to make these marketplaces better? What can we do to make this digital advertising world just work? And so after thinking about it, we decided, based on everything we know about this space, to go buy Alenti, a viewability company. And that's really important, because not only is Alenti the best viewability vendor in the market, they're also pioneers. And I have a lot of respect for pioneers, people who invent things. Laurent and Nico, the founders, have spent the last 7 years trying to figure out how to bring viewability into this industry. What I love about this is that they've not only cracked the code on viewability, they've thought beyond just the basics of how to make viewability a metric or something that marketers say, I only want viewable inventory. They thought, no, this is something new. This is a new signal for us to use when we think about the media to buy, and for publishers to think about how to design their sites. This is a new thing for us to all think about and ponder.